Have you ever noticed how you can read everyone else's emotions but struggle to name your own? How you apologize before you even speak, explain your boundaries like you're defending them in court, or find yourself attracted to people who keep you guessing? Have you ever wondered why you're always the one smoothing things over, making everyone comfortable, giving advice you never take yourself? Carl Jung said we repeat what we don't heal, that unconscious patterns run our lives until we bring them into the light. For women, these patterns often center around one devastating belief: that love must be earned through service, through being small, through managing everyone else's emotions. These 7 patterns may feel familiar, even natural, but they're keeping you small when you were meant to take up space. Carl Jung believed that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives, and we will call it fate. For women, this unconscious programming often shows up as emotional self-abandonment, the subtle but persistent habit of prioritizing everyone else's comfort over our own clarity. It's not dramatic. It's not obvious. It's the small daily choices that seem caring, but slowly erode the relationship with ourselves. The automatic sorry before stating a need. The instant yes to requests that feel heavy. The assumption that if someone is upset, it must somehow be our responsibility to fix it. These patterns don't develop in a vacuum. They're passed down through generations of women who learned that their worth depended on their ability to manage other people's emotions. The mother who couldn't rest until everyone in the house was happy. The grandmother who believed that a good woman never caused discomfort. The lineage of women who learned to read the room better than they read their own hearts. Jung called this the collective unconscious, the shared patterns that run deeper than individual experience. For women, many of these patterns center around the same core belief: that love is conditional, that it must be earned through service, through compliance, through the careful management of our own needs. But here's what's interesting. These patterns don't just affect our relationships with others. They fundamentally alter our relationship with ourselves. When we're constantly scanning for other people's needs, we lose touch with our own. When we're always adjusting our energy to match someone else's comfort level, we forget what our authentic energy actually feels like. The woman who automatically apologizes for taking up space eventually forgets that she deserves to take up space. The one who gives endlessly to emotionally unavailable people eventually forgets what it feels like to receive. The one who swallows her anger to keep the peace eventually forgets that she has the right to feel angry. This isn't about becoming selfish or uncaring. It's about recognizing that emotional self-abandonment doesn't actually serve anyone, including the people we're trying to take care of. But there's something most women never realize about these patterns. They're not personality flaws or character defects. They're unconscious strategies that made perfect sense in the context where they were learned. Once we understand this, everything changes. We're about to look at 7 specific patterns that might feel uncomfortably familiar, but stay with me, because recognition is the first step toward choice. Let's walk through these 7 patterns, not to judge them, but to understand them. Because what we understand, we can change. Pattern 1, over-explaining and over-apologizing. Have you ever sent a text message that was 3 paragraphs long when no would have sufficed? This pattern often develops in childhood when our thoughts and feelings were questioned or dismissed. We learned that our initial response wasn't enough. We needed to justify, to prove, to make our position bulletproof before anyone would respect it. The woman who over-explains is often incredibly intelligent and thoughtful, but she's operating from the unconscious belief that her first response isn't valid until it's been thoroughly defended. She's trying to prevent misunderstanding, but what she's actually doing is teaching people that her boundaries are negotiable. Pattern 2, choosing emotionally unavailable partners. This isn't about being attracted to bad boys. It's about unconsciously choosing partners who recreate familiar emotional dynamics. If love felt conditional in childhood, if affection had to be earned through performance, then available, consistent love can actually feel foreign and uncomfortable. The emotionally unavailable partner becomes a project, a chance to finally earn the love that always felt just out of reach. But here's the thing, we can't heal childhood wounds through adult relationships. The unavailable partner isn't just rejecting us, they're reflecting our own unavailability to ourselves. Pattern 3, confusing self-abandonment with selflessness. This is perhaps the most insidious pattern because it's disguised as virtue. The woman who gives until empty genuinely believes she's being loving. But giving from depletion isn't love. It's self-betrayal with good intentions. True selflessness comes from overflow, not emptiness. When we give from a full cup, both people benefit. When we give from depletion, we create resentment, exhaustion, and relationships built on unconscious scorekeeping. Pattern 4, avoiding anger to appear. Nice or spiritual, many women learned early that anger made them unlovable, so they developed sophisticated ways to avoid it. Spirituality, people-pleasing, perfectionism. But suppressed anger doesn't disappear. It goes underground and emerges as anxiety, depression, passive aggression, or physical illness. Anger is information. It tells us when our boundaries have been crossed, when our values have been violated, when something needs to change. The woman who never gets angry often becomes the one who seethes quietly, her unexpressed truth poisoning her from within. Pattern 5, staying in emotionally draining friendships. Out of guilt. This pattern shows up as loyalty to dysfunction rather than loyalty to growth. The friendship that consistently drains energy, the person who only calls during crisis, the relationship that feels more like emotional labor than mutual support. We stay because we confuse consistency with loyalty, because we believe that leaving means failing, because we've been taught that good people don't abandon others. But staying in relationships that drain us isn't kindness. It's enabling both people to avoid growth. Pattern 6, tolerating emotional crumbs and calling it love. This is about accepting the bare minimum and convincing ourselves it's enough. The partner who shows up sporadically, the friend who remembers us only when convenient, the family member who gives conditional approval. We tolerate crumbs because we've learned to minimize our needs, to be grateful for any attention, to believe that wanting more is selfish. But accepting crumbs doesn't make us humble. It makes us unavailable to real nourishment. Pattern 7, equating pain with depth and drama with passion. This pattern romanticizes suffering and turns trauma into identity. The belief that if it doesn't hurt, it isn't real. That struggle equals strength. That drama equals depth. This isn't about avoiding all discomfort. Growth requires some discomfort, but it's about recognizing the difference between productive challenge and unnecessary suffering. The woman who equates pain with depth often becomes addicted to intensity, confusing chaos with aliveness. Here's what Jung understood. These patterns aren't random. They're all variations of the same core wound, the belief that love is conditional, that we must earn our place in the world, that our worth depends on our ability to manage other people's emotions. But here's what's revolutionary. Once we see these patterns clearly, we can choose differently. Not perfectly, not immediately, but consciously. We can begin to interrupt the automatic responses that have been running our lives. The moment of recognition isn't comfortable. It's the mirror moment where we see clearly how we've been unconsciously betraying ourselves in the name of love. How we've been giving away our power while believing we were being good. But this recognition isn't meant to create shame. It's meant to create choice. For the first time, there's the possibility of responding rather than reacting, of choosing rather than repeating, of creating rather than inheriting. The woman who stops over-explaining discovers that her truth doesn't need justification. The one who becomes emotionally available to herself attracts partners who match her wholeness. The one who gives from fullness receives abundance in return. The one who honors her anger finds her boundaries. The one who chooses nourishing relationships creates space for authentic connection. The one who requires respect receives it. The one who stops romanticizing pain discovers that peace is actually deeper than drama. This isn't about perfection. It's about consciousness. It's about waking up to the patterns that have been running the show and choosing, moment by moment, to respond from awareness rather than automation. The most radical act isn't learning to love others better. It's learning to stop betraying ourselves. It's the quiet revolution of choosing self-loyalty over inherited emotional roles, of honoring our own needs as sacred rather than selfish, of remembering that we can't give what we don't have. Jung believed that the privilege of a lifetime is being who you truly are. But perhaps the greater privilege is discovering that who you truly are was never the problem to begin with. The patterns were just inherited scripts that no longer serve, survival strategies that have outlived their purpose. These patterns will arise again. They always do. But now there's awareness. Now there's choice. Now there's the possibility of interrupting the automatic response and asking, is this serving me? Is this serving the woman I'm becoming? The deepest healing isn't about transformation. It's about recognition. It's about seeing clearly what was always true beneath the patterns. That love doesn't have to be earned. That worth doesn't have to be proven. That the woman who honors her own needs is the one who has the most to give. Maybe the greatest revolution isn't learning to love better. It's learning to stop betraying what was never broken to begin with. Maybe it's simply choosing self-loyalty over inherited emotional roles, honoring our own hearts as sacred territory, and remembering that we can't pour from an empty cup, but we can overflow from a full one. What remains when the patterns dissolve? Not emptiness, but presence. Not loss, but return. Not transformation, but recognition of what was always eternally enough.